Welcome to the 2024 Red Meat Updates Virtual Farm Tour. We're in the Central Highlands near Bothwell today visiting the Bowden family at Cluny, who are a leading Tasmanian red meat producer and have adopted ag technology to increase efficiency and production on farm. I'm Sarah Cole from Woodburn at Cressy.
I'm Rich Ellis from Weather and Pastoral at Bothwell.
I'm Tom Yule from Coyne, Flinders Island.
And I'm Tony Butler from the Pasture Trials Network, and I'm very excited to sponsor today's BFT.
Will, Ed, thanks for hosting us on this year's virtual farm tour. Can you tell us a bit about yourselves and give us a rundown of your business as well?
Our absolute pleasure, Rich. Yeah, thank you for coming and filming. I'm Will and my brother Eddie. We're fifth generation farmers.
Based here at Cluny, in the Central Highlands. We're 430 metres above sea level, 8 kilometres from Bothwell. We're on 15,000 hectares spread across 4 properties, and we employ about 16 people at the moment.
Will and Ed, there's a bit of history here with the farm, obviously standing out the front of the old blacksmith shed. Can you give us a little overview of sort of how Cluny came about and just sort of the generations and where you're sort of taking us?
We purchased the farm from the Clarks in 1911. We'd originally owned the Bothwell pub and came over as convicts, and basically our family has expanded the property with a lot of expansion happening in the 60s up until today. Our property started off at 830 hectares, being the original Cluny property, and it's now 15,000 hectares.
What's the breakdown of your business at the moment with your various enterprises and so forth?
So wool is our primary income, and prime lambs and sheep they're next in line for income. We have 22,000 ewes, and roughly half of them are put over a terminal sire for breeding first cross fat lambs. We have 500 Angus cows and 200 Angus heifers that we breed 250 first cross Wagyu calves out of, and then the rest pure Angus calves. And we also grow potatoes and some cereal crops, and we have a selective logging native forest operation and roughly 2,000 hectares of plantation eucalyptus nut and timber. Our wool clip averages 18 micron, and we cut roughly 6.5 kilos of wool off our ewes. Finish our terminal sire lambs, first cross lambs, to about 50 kilos, and they go to predominantly the mainland.
And the weather lamb portion?
So we finish our weather lambs and sell them as lamb over the hooks, and we shear them in July, August.
And you also breed your own merino rams as well?
We do, yes. With the 2 different nucleuses, we have roughly 200 rams on each farm.
The reason why we run those two different merino nucleuses is so that we can fast track our genetic gain, and then also supplement it a bit, and by selling those rams to other local people about the place who like the look of our stock.
These are obviously some of your breeders. Tell us a bit about them.
Absolutely. So we've got 500 breeders. We're putting Wagyu bulls over our heifers, creating a first cross Wagyu calf, which is fattened to feedlot entry weight, which is 320 kilos. And then they're shipped off up to the Hay Plains.
And what sort of weights are we sort of targeting for April?
Weaners are generally 280 to 320 kilos. We generally wean at about 85%.
Will, Ed, Petra, thank you for coming along.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, no worries. So You're the agronomist here at this Cluny farm? Yeah. Now, I'm quite interested. Irrigation is quite a significant part of your business. How do you go about choosing why you had irrigation, but also how are you about choosing your species for this location?
The varieties that we've chosen have to be relatively hardy against, not being watered, because we're irrigating, but we don't want to be having to pour tons of water on it because we're in a relatively dry climate. So, but of course they're high production ryegrasses under irrigation. We have both centre pivot and flood irrigation. So the flood irrigation is more a perennial pasture. It's there for long term. So that's your ryegrass, clover, subclover mix. Whereas the centre pivot circles and fodder, we're choosing to grow rapes, high production rapes, lucerne, high production short-term ryegrass, and grazing oat crops as well as.
You're obviously in a harsh environment here, cold winters, can be warm summers, rainfall marginal at times. Persistence in ryegrasses, do you find issues with that, and how do you select what varieties to go for?
Well, I think that's a great question for Petra actually, because if we're not too sure about what we want or an old variety hasn't worked for us, then we give Petra a ring. Yeah.
So persistence is a really important variable when selecting a pasture species. There's different ryegrasses on the market, whether they're hybrids or perennials. There's a lot of research out there, like looking at these varieties side by side in different production systems, and you choose that according to the seasonal production windows. When do you need the feed? How much water you've got, what endophyte is present, whether it's going to give you some animal health issues, what stock you have to feed on those grasses.
Do you want to discuss more, enlighten us in terms of why you selected the species that you have, and in terms of their fit? And probably Petra, you might want to build on this in your different, looking around us, we've got some nice lowlands here, which are obviously going to be more productive. Then we can see some hills in the background, and how are you choosing the different species into those different environments?
Yeah, well, we choose for these high production areas. We have ryegrass in the mix, and generally most of our pastures will sow with ryegrass, but the makeup of our perennial dryland pastures is generally subclover, white clover, Coxford phalaris, and ryegrass to add a bit of production. But the Coxford and phalaris gives the pasture a longevity and drought hardiness, and the combination is good for as far as protein and nutrient goes.
So when we look at the paddock, we look at the constraints and opportunities, and you have to have realistic expectations of what you can actually achieve. But generally in dryland here, phalaris Coxford do really well. They've got deeper root systems, they're more persistent, drought hardy, and they can cope with adverse conditions. They persist for longer. And with new varieties on the market these days, they're more palatable and produce, and respond to opportunistic water or fertiliser.
Southern Tassie's faced a pretty challenging 18 months or so with consecutive failed growing seasons. How are you placed leading into this winter?
Not fantastic. Yeah, we're really short on feed. I mean, telling you we're short on feed in this paddock where there's nearly a foot high grass, you're not going to believe us. But we've concentrated on growing the fodder where we can for fattening our fattening stock. But where we're really battling is our brooding stock that are positioned mainly on dry land, and they're very, very short leading into winter.
Did those tight periods, help inform the decision to build the feedlot you've just constructed?
Yeah, definitely. That was that was in the thinking that not only were we able to assist our grazing operation with fattening and using it as a feedlot, but it was going to be extra drought insurance.
Well, boys, here we are at the Cluny Feedlot. This looks like a relatively new investment. A bit going on here today. Can you give us a bit of a background on what happens here?
Yeah, so this is a FeedTech feedlot. We got 8 pens here. We can feedlot 3,000 lambs. Just recently we've had our coal ewes in here. A, because we wanted to shear them before we sent them over the hooks, and B, we couldn't get rid of them quick enough, so this allowed us to take them off the paddocks and put some condition on them before they went. We finished the feedlot 12 months ago, and yeah, we're looking to use it every year to assist our fodder crop operation, so we can take animals off the fodder crops quicker and get them fatter quicker before the winter sets in and our feed quantities drop because of the green drought.
Talk us through what you're up to here.
Yeah, well this was a lot of unproductive shrub ground covered in bracken fern, and we've done a lot of renovating here, and through tillage and grazing management we've eradicated the bracken.
Usually this would be where we would manage to fatten some stock, and then also put weaners on this ground as well, and it puts a really nice bit of condition on them over winter, and any stock that you hadn't fattened down in the irrigation yet, you would put up in here. There's always generally one or two paddocks being developed on each of the farms apart from Christian Marsh, because that's up in the high country and most of those pastures are good. Our strategy usually is growing this crop and then filling the autumn feed gap with this crop from any late summer rain / early autumn. Because it takes advantage of the moisture a lot more than your pasture does.
We're up at Christian Marsh. What happens up here?
So this is a high country block. It was bought particularly for its riparian right, water right, which is a right over the hydro. And it already had some established flood irrigation on it, and then also it was bought and paid for in 2 years after purchase for the standing timber.
It had a functioning flood irrigation system at the time of purchase, which is around 1967, I think it was. My grandfather, having just come back from Lincoln University and learning all about flood irrigation, implemented our first irrigation up here by building a weir across the river and increasing the height of the irrigation so that it could run at a higher level on the farm and cover more land. Well, it's a fantastic highland property. It's a lot higher elevation, so it's colder of a winter time, but during the summertime we're able to bring livestock up here because there's more rainfall. It's generally wetter, so we get that high summer production, and then the livestock have to be brought back to the lower level country for lambing and calving and to avoid the snowstorms.
We're on the banks of the mighty Clyde River and the headwaters to what is the Cluny and Weasel irrigation scheme. Can you tell us the significance of this point on the property and what lies beyond?
Yeah, so this channel was built in 1983 by my father, Scott Bowden. It was the brainchild of Dad and my grandfather, Richard Bowden. The channel's 13 kilometres long, and my father surveyed it at the age of 21, and there was no roads to get in here, so it was at its furthest point 2 hours of walking to get to where he was needing to survey, and then he would survey all day and 2 hours to walk home which would have been a lot. And there was a lot of explosives that were needed when building it, so much so that, and Dad was doing the exploding, that my grandmother, when she picked up the nitropyl gelignite and detonators, that they called her Gelignite Jude because her name was Judith.
So there's a fair bit of ag tech here, boys. Looks like a couple of generations of ag tech. Can you talk us through how it's sort of evolved over the years?
Definitely some agricultural tech. Dad helped me basically make it remote controlled. Together we welded up a Toyota steering column to the hand winch that was originally here to raise and lower the big mild steel control gate. Yeah, so it's grown brains since then. It now has a shaft encoder to tell the height of the gate, and there is an encoder with a float at the weir that measures the amount of water that we're taking, and that's all communicating to a central server, which then controls the outflows of our Weasel Dam, our Weasel Creek, and how much water we're sending to the Cluny farm. And I don't even have to think about it. All I have to do is put in how much water I want at the Cluny farm and how much water to allocate my neighbours and how much water we want to keep in the dam. And then if the inflows change, the outflows automatically change.
Weasel Plains hydro scheme, pretty impressive. What's going on here?
Oh, well, I'm very lucky, well, we're very lucky that our father and grandfather had the foresight of putting in a hydroelectric power station. They put in the pipeline and it had 140 metres ahead. And when a pivot stopped, the relief valves would turn on and it'd blast away, and they'd always think, gee, it'd be nice to be able to harness that mechanical energy. So they went to Tamar Designs in just out of Launceston, and this was commissioned in 2015, and it generates enough electricity for roughly 400 homes a day. It's about 5.3 megawatts a day. All of our pivots here at Weasel are wired in behind the meter here, so if the power station's generating electricity, we're powering all of our irrigation infrastructure here at Weasel, which is fantastic.
Well, here we are at Wood Springs, one of your newer purchases. Can you tell us a bit about it and what's happened here?
Yeah, so Dad and my grandfather purchased this property in 2011, and when they purchased it, it was a dryland grazing operation. It needed a bit of love. Hadn't had, well, there wasn't really a fertiliser history, and a lot of the pastures weren't necessarily improved. And Dad had the vision when he purchased the property of building this dam and putting irrigation out here, and that's exactly what he did. He built this 2,600 megalitre dam in 2014, and now we have 300 hectares of irrigated country out here. Property has tripled its carrying capacity, improved pastures, basically ploughed the whole property, fertiliser, lime.
So one thing to note about Wood Springs that's different to the other farms that we have is that it's completely on its own. We shift stock out here, like young stock, to run on the irrigation out here. But as far as the water goes, it's only catchment. It's not fed by any channel or river or anything. It's just a creek that's dammed with roughly 20 kilometres, 23 kilometres of catchment going back to Table Mountain.
and then it's gravity feeds to the pump shed, and then unlike our other schemes which are gravity fed to the pivots, and the irrigated area is below the dam. The irrigated area here is it needed pump assistance because it's a bit above the dam. That's the difference, so hence all the pump infrastructure. And
We are at the top of the Wi-Fi Tower Hill. There's a bit going on up here. Ed, well, tell us about what this piece of infrastructure does.
Well, this was the first piece of Wi-Fi infrastructure on Cluny. I built the tower before I went to Ag College back in 2013, and then they erected it while I was at Ag College. It's got 4 Wi-Fi radios on it. One is the original backhaul link to Bothwell, where we originally set up an internet connection, and we beamed that back to the houses back at Cluny, and that was a game changer because before that we were on the old slow satellite broadband, which, as we all know, was pretty average. And these days there's a few vector antennas that talk to every pivot on Cluny, and various pump sheds and shearing sheds, providing connectivity to them for monitoring of pumps and pivots and cameras. And there's also a LoRaWAN transmitter there, a gateway that talks to soil moisture probes and a few tank level sensors. And yeah.
The reason we did that is because just reception here is no good. Like, you just can't get it wherever you need it, and so Wi-Fi was the answer.
So how far does this service? This picks up the Wood Springs property, several kilometres south of here?
Longest link on this for this tower is 15 kilometres out to our basin paddock at Wood Springs. And the other reason we chose Wi-Fi as opposed to relying on cell modems and things like that is because we wanted to try and go down the path of less subscription-based services and more, sort of being open to being able to connect different devices together, going down the track without having different brands not talking to each other.
And it's always adaptable. Like, you don't necessarily have to stick with a brand.
Just plug more things into it and add on.
And all this information is accessible on your mobile devices and desktop as well?
Computer, mobile device, I can look at it anywhere. I can be fishing in the Mediterranean and check my pivots, make sure the pump's pumping, dams are full. Impressive. Sheep are feeding in the feedlot.
Being brothers, you've probably both got your strengths. Where in the business do you sort of spend more of your time? So, Ed, what's sort of your main roles?
I really love soil and agronomy and it's just growing stuff. Will and I both make decisions and in the cropping and
I'm mainly capital works, technology, overseeing, livestock and cropping. But
fortunate enough to grow up just down the road from the Bowden family, and it's certainly a business which is important to the family, and a family-oriented business which has helped develop a culture which has flowed through to your workforce as well. Two very important integral members of that business and family being Kate Bowden and Millie Bowden. Can you tell us how important that family dynamic is and how that flows into developing a culture for your workforce?
That relationship and between our family and these two women, of course, are key pillars of the business, and as everyone would know, the real bosses, and how much work they do in the background, with my mum doing all of the accounts and bills and wages and BAS and everything to do with the account side of the business, and Millie giving her a helping hand at times, and a team of 16 at the minute. And the team works really well with that dynamic, and I just feel so grateful that we have such a good team with us, because it wouldn't be possible to run a business of this size without people like them.
Makes it a family business, as quite a lot of our employees are generational employees as well, so it's a real family business.
Some have been with us for over 40 years now.
That concludes this year's Red Meat Updates virtual farm tour. We'd like to thank Pasture Trials Network for their sponsorship of this year's tour. We've covered a lot of ground over the last couple of days, and so we'd like to thank the Bowden family for taking time out of their busy schedule. It's a real credit to you guys and the family to see the development which has taken place over previous generations, and it's really exciting to see some of the technology and the other advancements which you guys are implementing at the moment. We wish you the very best.
It's been a real honour to feel that people are interested in our operation and want to know what we're doing. I hope that we've managed to fit in the scale of our operation and what we're doing into 25 minutes.
Well done.
Thanks, Eddie.
Thanks, Tom.
Thanks,
Rich.
Willis. Cheers, Tom.